Can you guess what Ryback said to CM Punk after botching his gorilla press and making him fall on the concrete? Do you want to know how Punk got fired on his wedding day? Have you ever wondered at what precise moment CM Punk told himself that he had to go away from the WWE? Are you ready to be shocked when you'll find out how he almost didn't appear on the cover of the company's video game in the fall of 2012? You will learn all the answers in this video. You are on the Wrestling Paradise. 7 unbelievable facts about CM Punk. It's clobbering time! The beginning of 2014, CM Punk wasn't really feeling well. His body was in pain, with knee, elbow and ribs injuries over the years, and an infection on his back that was getting worse and worse. After the Royal Rumble, he was in his hotel room and he had a moment of clarity. He asked himself, what am I doing with my life right now? He realized that he no longer had any pleasure working for WWE, that he was ruining his health when not only he was about to marry his girlfriend AJ Lee, but that, in addition, since 2011, he still hadn't been given the WrestleMania main event, his ultimate dream. So the next day, he went to see Vince McMahon in his office, in which there was also Triple H, the one who was supposed to be his opponent at WrestleMania 30 a few weeks later. Punk told them that he was unhappy, sick, that they were stupid for making Batista come back as a babyface, that he had done many sacrifices for Vince, in particular to return way too soon from injuries and to lose merchandising money by turning heel, and that the boss told him every time that he would owe him one. He told them that he felt his creativity was being silenced, that he didn't want to face Triple H, who should have let him win, according to him, in 2011 at their Night of Champions match, because that was best for business. The kid from Chicago said goodbye to them. Vince McMahon had tears in his eyes, gave him a hug, telling him, "We are a family." And yet, very soon after, Punk would be suspended until the day after WrestleMania. And for the record, Vince was telling investors that it was a sabbatical. He didn't want to tell them the truth, namely that he was suspended. From there, a war was going to take place between the WWE and CM Punk. Our number 6 happened in the beginning of 2012. CM Punk wanted to walk his friend Chael Sonnen, a legendary UFC fighter, to the octagon in the fight he was going to have in Chicago. Of course, for Punk, who had been an MMA fan for years to the point of even going to the UFC a few years later, it was something that he really wanted to do. And from a more professional standpoint, WWE had everything to gain from this. It was just days before the Royal Rumble. In addition, in his city of Chicago, which would surely have given him a huge pop. And it is very likely that his appearance in this UFC event would have created a buzz and could have encouraged new people to buy the WWE pay-per-view that was coming. But unfortunately, Vince McMahon refused to let Punk do this, saying that MMA is a barbarian sport and that someone would eventually die there. While Vince is the man who made one of his shows continue when wrestler Owen Hart had just accidentally died. The boss of the company even thought it was ridiculous that the UFC planned to make women's fights. Punk was disappointed by Vince's vision. Even more since a few months later, he would see Triple H accompany Floyd Mayweather to the ring for his boxing match, a sport in which many tragedies occurred, even in the ring itself. Can you only imagine how bad WWE was able to treat CM Punk sometimes? But folks, just wait to see number 1, which is even worse. Stay tuned. The year 2013 did not go at all as CM Punk imagined, and without a shadow of a doubt, it is part of what made him want to leave the WWE. First, from a physical standpoint, you should know that at the beginning of the year, he had been carrying injuries for months that needed to be treated, and he even told Vince McMahon that after losing his title to The Rock at the Royal Rumble, he really needed a break to recover. But the boss refused and made him wrestle until WrestleMania, including against The Undertaker at the grandest stage of them all, whom he had lost, just like against The Rock in their rematch at Elimination Chamber. While Punk wanted to have a break until SummerSlam for his match against Brock Lesnar, Vince once again refused and made him come back for the Payback pay-per-view in Chicago in June 2013 because supposedly he needed him. And from a wrestling point of view, it was even worse for Punk. While he had tried everything to convince the boss, he was not included in the WrestleMania main event between John Cena and The Rock to make it eventually a triple threat. In fact, he was always putting the part-timers over. He first lost to The Rock, then Taker at WrestleMania, then Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. And he was angry to see that he was the one to still be around after these pay-per-views and to be completely discredited. Can you only imagine how 2013 must have disgusted him? CM Punk and injuries in WWE is a long story. In 2010, when he was the prophet of the straight edge society, he already had a very negative experience in this area. At that time, he had an elbow injury, for which he needed surgery. And at that moment, Punk thought that since he was going to need some time off to recover from this elbow surgery, he wanted to also do something that was on his mind for quite a while: to have an eye operation. While the two operations were done and while he expected to rest for several weeks, the WWE made him do some tests, and the doctors immediately considered him fit and ready to wrestle. And that's how, only 5 days after an elbow surgery, and while his eyes were still fragile, he was back in the ring. To make it even worse, it was the debut of the destructive Nexus group. And for the record, during this attack, one of the guys from Nexus put a finger in his eye, which really angered CM Punk, since he told his friend Luke Gallows from the Straight Edge Society, who was also there, to beat them up. But at that moment, the one who would later become Ryback told them, "You're supposed to put us over." It was not the last time that things would go wrong between the Chicago Kid and Ryback. Don't go anywhere. One of the characters who had a major negative role in CM Punk's WWE career is Ryback. On several occasions, he physically destroyed him. Punk told that Ryback once kicked him as hard as he could in his stomach, and according to him, it was completely intentional. Another time, he also had to face him in a TLC match at the beginning of 2013 on Raw, when he just came back from a surgery at the end of 2012, for which he normally would have needed a few more weeks to recover. But again, as it often happened in his time in the WWE, Vince McMahon asked CM Punk to help him, telling him he would owe him one, and Punk chose to do what he was told. The time when Ryback wrecked him the most was in September 2013, when he did a gorilla press on Punk. Unfortunately, he threw him next to the table on which he was supposed to land, which led Punk to fall on the concrete. And the Chicago Kid admits that this mistake probably cost him 20 years of his life. Since it was a move Ryback was used to do correctly, Punk asked him in an intense rage if he did it on purpose, or if he was just dumb as. And Ryback had an answer that was at least perfectly clear. "I'm dumb as. I'm sorry." What's for sure is that the two men will not go on vacation together. Despite the unfair and disrespectful treatment that CM Punk feels he has been subjected to by WWE for many years, he still managed to be on the cover of one of its video games, something that is not given to anyone in the company. But it could very well not have happened. Indeed, Punk told that his friend Paul Heyman, when he was in charge of writing the storylines for the video game, had told him that it was great for him to be on the cover, but Punk replied that he was not aware of anything. Later, thanks to someone whose name would remain unknown, he was able to read an exchange of emails between one of the people of the company that made the video game and the WWE office. Apparently, the video game company really wanted the Chicago Kid to be on the cover of the game because they considered that he was the most popular wrestler and that it was a relevant choice business-wise. But in those emails, WWE replied to him every time that they didn't want CM Punk to be on the cover, but rather Sheamus. Fortunately for Punk, he still ended up being on the cover despite the reluctance of Vince McMahon's company. And for the record, that did not prevent the game from being a success, since 250,000 copies were sold in the week following its release in 2012, which placed it just behind number 1, which was Assassin's Creed 3. What may have been the most memorable act of this whole story between WWE and CM Punk is the fact that he received the mail informing him of his dismissal on the day of his wedding with AJ Lee. For him, it was clearly something that had been done on purpose, with the intention of ruining one of the most beautiful days of his life. You should know that 2 days before, he had a brief exchange with Triple H, who asked him if he was available to speak after weeks of silence. Punk agreed to have a chat, but just wanted to wait until he got married and got back from his honeymoon. And he also told him to fix the administrative and financial problems concerning him. But the game would not respond to his message. CM Punk said that in this dismissal letter, there was even a non-competition clause that specifically mentioned the UFC. And later, there would also be a non-disparagement clause where WWE and CM Punk pledged not to speak ill of each other, while Punk had already been called a critter on the air. We can also notice that Vince McMahon apologized on the Stone Cold podcast for the very unwelcome timing of this dismissal letter, by saying that it was unintentional and that it came from a lack of communication between several departments of the WWE. But the kid from Chicago did not believe any word of it, adding that his wife, AJ Lee, who was still working there at the time, had even taken time off to be able to get married, and that everyone knew about it. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt for him that it was calculated and intentional. And according to him, if Vince McMahon would have really felt sorry for it, he would have called him to apologize long before, rather than doing it in front of cameras months later. Wasn't that crazy? Who would have thought that CM Punk had so many injuries during his time in WWE? Can you believe how bad he was treated at times, according to him? And that he was fired on the day of his wedding? The fact of the matter is that between 2006 and 2013, Punk never main evented WrestleMania. And we can say it's too bad, because it would have given more meaning to all his problems throughout the years. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?